Last Sunday I talked about faith, and if you remember, part of one of the definitions that the Catechism gives is faith is a human act by which a believer gives personal adherence to God. And today, in the letter to the Hebrews, we hear Jesus called the leader and perfecter of faith. And that word perfecter reminds us of something important about Catholic understanding of faith, is that it's not a one and done thing. So I know some of you are familiar with a phrase that goes through part of some of the Protestant churches of once saved, always saved. And that means more than one thing, but this idea that we give our lives to Jesus once and that's it is not an idea that in our Catholic thinking that we can have a moment of conversion where we meet the Lord, you might say, or come to know God, or give our lives to God in some way. But then the rest of our lives is a process of deepening that commitment, or making that personal adherence to God stronger or more comprehensive. And that idea that we grow in our faith is another phrase we might use, tells us that our movement towards God never ends. And one of the things that it seems to me that idea can do for us is bring us patience with ourselves. There are some of us who tend to be critical of ourselves, or we can listen to that voice of the enemy. It says, you'll never get any better, or God could never forgive this sin, it's too big, or whatever it is. And that critical voice can impede us, and I guess despair really of ever growing in holiness. But the other thing it can do, and probably more of us need this, it can remind us to be patient with others. I know somewhere I saw, I don't know, like on a pillow or something, how these phrases show up, be patient, God isn't finished with me yet. And this idea that the other person, even with their sins or faults, failings, also want to grow closer to God. But they are also in process. And to think about other people in this way can change a little bit of how we deal with folks. And the way we grow in our faith or deepen our commitment to God, the best way is to follow the advice that the author gives as well. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. Stay connected to Jesus, and He will lead us in faith, and He will bring us and perfect our faith. Now, it's not an easy process, I have to warn you, and I'm sure most of you probably already know this in some way. This is not the long-haired, sandal-wearing, nice guy hippie Jesus that we like so much. He exists, but the Jesus that will perfect us in the faith is the Jesus that he talks about himself in the gospel. that he wants to light a fire. He wants to burn off all those things that keep us from growing in our faith. Because while we may make an allegiance to God or give ourselves to God in some way, we also still are hanging on to a lot of other things. Our own selfishness, our own desires, our own ideas of how things should be, or maybe it's to other people or to other things. And little by little, we have to let go of those things so that we can connect even more strongly with God. And Jesus calls himself today one who divides. Now notice, that's not one who scatters. Right? The one who scatters is the one we call diabolos, the Greek scatter, the devil. Jesus doesn't call himself a scatterer, he calls himself a divider. That from once we meet Jesus, the rest of our lives is a process of choosing Jesus over this person, or Jesus over this thing, or Jesus over something that I hold so dear. And that division is not just outside between father, son, and mother-in-law, and daughter-in-law, what he says, but it's also in ourselves. That division in ourselves of choosing to let this go so that we can grab on to God even more closely. And so, we who have chosen to give our lives to God have only begun on a journey. It's not the end point. And so, the rest of our lives, hopefully, right, will be a process of continuing in that conversion. And if we stay close to Jesus, if we keep our eyes fixed on him, he will lead us to that point one day that we have given our entire lives over to God. Finally, I want to leave you with just a little bit. It's kind of a tag to my homily, but I wanted to leave you with this, to ponder this. Often, I think unconsciously we assume, like when people aggravate us or do something wrong or something, that we look at them as a finished product. We look at them as if that's the way they want to be. And no wonder we get so impatient and aggravated with people. But what if we looked at people as if they weren't finished yet? As if this is somebody who wants to be holier than they are, but they just aren't there yet. I wonder if we'd be, you know me, I'm not soft on crime. It's still, things that are wrong are still wrong. But maybe we could react to people with a little more patience and even prayer, and try to help people grow in holiness. So just think about that this week.